MapleStory ProMode quick tip.
So if you're at all familiar with programming, then you're probably already aware that a variable is just a stand-in for a value. Now, global variables are variables that can be accessed from anywhere within the script and even from outside of it. They're declared outside the scope of any particular function and usually towards the top of the script. In MapleStory World's ProMode, this works exactly the same way. However, you can't just type them out. They have to be declared explicitly using this little plus icon and then specified as to what variable type it is. Now, if the script you're working on is a component, these values can be accessed from the Properties tab, and their default values can be changed based off of individual entities. If for whatever reason you don't actually need to see these in the Properties menu, you can hide them from the Settings menu. Here you can also set different kinds of tooltips and descriptions and what have you. Properties can also be set to either automatically sync or not sync between the server and client based off of your individual needs. It should be noted, however, that this is not available for every single variable type. For example, this does not work with tables. Properties can be referenced from other scripts by first getting a reference to the script that contains it and then just typing dot in whatever the property's name is. This is obviously really useful and probably the primary way of communicating between scripts and modifying data. Properties can be accessed and modified from anywhere within inside of its own script simply by tagging self.whatever the property's name is. This makes them really useful for tracking values that need to be accessed and modified in multiple places across your script. But let's say you have a variable that you don't need to be tracked across the entire script. You can use what's called a local variable. These can be declared simply by typing local and then whatever you want to call it. You can leave it undefined to begin with and set it later, or you can initially just set it to whatever value you want. It should be noted, though, that since these are declared within a particular scope, they cannot be accessed from outside of that. Trying to access them from outside of that particular scope will just lead to an error. The last thing we should probably talk about is the _t property. The t property acts like a global variable in that it can be accessed from anywhere within or outside the component. The difference between it and a general property is that the t property is created when it is first written into a function. You can create it by writing self._t.whatever the property's name is and then setting that from there. Now keep in mind that it can only be used within the same space that it was created in. So if you create it on the server, you cannot access it from the client and vice versa. This prevents things from becoming too bloated by trying to constantly synchronize values between the server and client. I think that's all I have for you today, my friends. Until next time, this has been a
MapleStory ProMode quick tip.